Introduction. Over the last 3 decades, personal data have come to play an increasingly important role in our economies, societies, and everyday lives. Innovations, particularly in information and communication technologies, have impacted business operation, government administration, and the personal activity of individuals. New technologies and responsible data uses are yielding great societal and economic benefits. The volume of personal data being collected, used, and stored is vast and continues to grow. Modern communication networks support global accessibility and continuous multi-point data flows. The potential uses of personal data have increased tremendously as a result of the wide range of analytics that can provide comprehensive insight into individual movement, interests, and activities. At the same time, the abundance and persistence of personal data have elevated the risk to individuals' privacy. Personal data is increasingly used in ways not anticipated at the time of collection. Almost every human activity leaves behind some form of digital trial, rendering it increasingly easy to monitor individuals' behavior. Personal data security breaches are common. These increased risks signal the need for effective safeguard in order to protect privacy. Now, I would like to lay down what is data privacy. So, data privacy or information privacy is a branch of data security concerned with proper handling of data, consent, notice, and regulatory obligation. More specifically, practical data privacy concerns often revolve around number one, whether or how data is shared with third parties, number two, how data is legally collected or stored. Today, we'll look at why data privacy is important and how it is linked to data security. Then we'll take a look at the legislation that covers data privacy in several key countries. Finally, we'll give you some ways to improve your data privacy in both personal and business environments by a way of survey. Now, what data is included in data privacy? So, number one is race. Number two is ethnic origin. Number three is political opinions. Number four is religious or philosophical beliefs. Number five is trade union membership. Number six is genetic data. Number seven is biometric data. Number eight is health data. Number nine is sex life. And number 10 is sexual orientation. Now, the question is, why is data privacy important? There are two drivers for why data privacy is one of the most significant issues in our industry. Data is one of the most important assets a company or an individual has. With the rise of data economy, companies find enormous value in collecting, sharing, and using data. Companies such as Google, Facebook, and Amazon have built empires atop the data economy. Transparency in how businesses request consent, abide their privacy policies, and manage the data that they have collected is vital to building trust and accountability with customers and partners who expect privacy. Now, I would like to lay down what is data privacy and what is data security. So, these two have a huge difference, or you can say a small difference between them. So, data security and data privacy are often interchangeably, but there are distinct different differences between them. So, data security protects data from compromise by external attackers and malicious insiders, while data privacy governs how data is collected, shared, and used. Now, I would like to lay down what is IT Act. So, in this IT Act was formed in the year 2000. So, now I would even like to lay down what is IT Act 2000. So, IT Act was formed in the year 2000. So, Information Technology Act 2000 is an act to provide legal recognition for transactions carried out by means of electronic data interchange and other means of electronic communication, commonly referred as electronic commerce, which involve the use of alternative to paper-based methods of communication and storage information to facilitate electronic filling of documents with the government agencies. Now, I would like to put down some grounds on which government can interfere with data. Under Section 69 of the IT Act, any person authorized by the government or any of its officers, especially sovereignty or integrity of India, defense of India, security of state, friendly relations with foreign states, or public order, or for preventing to commission of any cognizable offense relating to above, or for investigation to any offense for reasons to be recorded in writing by order, can direct any government agency of the government to intercept, monitor, or cause to be intercepted or monitored any information generated, transmitted, received, or stored in computer. Now, I would like to lay down some amendments to it. So, number one is Section 43A, which says compensation for failure in protect data. Now, Section 66, this says computer related offenses. Now, Section 66A, which says punishment for sending offensive messages through communication service, etc. Section 66B, punishment for dishonestly receiving stolen computer resource or communication device. Section 66C, punishment for identified theft. Section 66E, punishment for violation of privacy. Section 66F, punishment for cyber terrorism. Section 67, punishment for publishing or transmitting dirty material in electronic form. Section 67A, punishment for publishing or transmitting of material depicting children in sexual explicit act in electronic form. Now, there are some limitations to IT Act as well. Now, this says the IT Act was enacted with the primary intent of providing data protection. The other one says the scope and applicability of the provisions of the IT Act on a data protection is very narrow. Provisions of the IT Act fail to specify any specific governmental agency which would govern data protection in India. And it also says the IT Act does not lay out any penalties for breach except Section 72A. And the last one says the IT rules apply only to a limited sensitive personal data. Now, IT Act is lacking in personal data protection provision, and IT Act is mostly concerned with organizational data and provision. The need was felt to enact its statute that addresses the protection of personal data only. So, in this direction, PDP 2019 was formed, and now I'm going to discuss about it. So, some of the key concepts brought by the PDP Bill 2019 are as follows. So, the first one says social media intermediaries and voluntary verification of accounts. This includes Section 26 and 28 of the bill. The PDP Bill 2019 extends the obligation of significant data fiduciaries to another class of entity called the social media intermediaries, SMI. The bill defined SMI to mean intermediaries who primarily solely enable online interaction between two or more users and allow them to create, upload, share, modify, or access information using its services. Now, the second one is central government can exempt any government agency from the bill. That is Section 35 of the bill. The provision for government access to personal data under the PDP Bill 2019, Section 35, is wide and gives the central government power to exempt any government agency from the preview of the bill and does not codify the principle of necessity and proportionality as determines to access. Now, number three is delusion of data localization requirements. This includes Section 33 and 34 of the bill. Critical personal data may only be processed in India. Sensitive personal data, that is SPD, may be transferred outside of India based on explicit consent. And first one says if the transfer is made per a contract or intra-group scheme. Number two says central government allows transfer to a country, entity, or international organization. And number three says data protection authority may allow a transfer of SPD for specific purposes. Now, number fourth is the right to assure. This includes Section 18 of the bill. The PTP Bill 2019 has brought the right to assure alongside the right to correction of personal data. The data principal may request data fiduciaries for a right to assure of personal data when such data is no longer necessary for the purpose of proceeding. Now, number five, removal of judicial member from selection committee recommending members to the Data Protection Authority. This includes Section 42 of the bill. The PDP Bill 2019 has removed the inclusion of a judicial member, the Chief Justice of India or another Supreme Court judge, from the selection committee, which is empowered to give recommendation to the central government for the appointment of members of the Data Protection Authority, that is DPA. The DPA is completely dependent on central government for its formation and membership. Now, number six, central government can direct data fiduciaries to share anonymized personal data, non-personal data. Now, this is Section 91 of the bill. The PDP Bill 2019 under Section 91 says it defines non-personal data as data that does not fall under the definition of personal data. Now, number B says empowers the central government to direct any data fiduciary processor to provide any anonymized personal data or non-personal data. Now, number 7 says transparency in data sharing and the concept of consent marriages. This includes Section 17, 21, and 23 of the bill. Now, Section 17, Clause 3 says of the PDP Bill 2019 gives right to data principal to access in one place the identities of data fiduciaries with whom their personal data has been shared by any other data fiduciary. This potentially enables data principal to review the entities with whom their personal data has been shared by one particular fiduciary. Data principal shall have the right to know about all the entities which are processing, sharing their personal data. This clubbed with the right to withdraw consent enhances the right of the data principals in terms of their information privacy. Now, number 8, definitions of personal and sensitive data. Now, this includes Section 3, Clause 28 and Clause 36 of the bill. The PDP Bill 2019 has expanded the definition of personal data to include inferred data. Section 3, Clause 28 includes and shall include any interference drawn from such data for the purpose of profiling. Including inferred data for the purpose of profiling in the definition of personal data is a positive move, as this will give the right to data principal to request data fiduciaries for such data as well. The PDP Bill 2019 has taken off passwords from under the preview of sensitive personal data. This may be for the reason for ease transfer of such data outside India when read in conjunction with the data localization clauses section 34 and section 33 of the bill. Now the last one, that is number 9, privacy by design policy, that is section 22 of the bill. The PDP Bill 2019 introduces a concept of a privacy by design policy. Every data fiduciary is required to prepare a privacy by design policy and have it certified by the DPA. There is a requirement on each data fiduciary to publish this privacy by design policy once it has been certified by the DPA. Thank you.
Okay, there are a lot of provisions that the personal data protection bill has in it, but ma'am, आपने जैसे as you told us that it is not yet implemented. It is still in the phase of implementation, and when it will be implemented, we don't know. But it is right on the we are on the right path at least. We have a lot of laws that are there around the world, and a lot of very good laws that that revolve only around the protection of personal data. The advocate Yashasvi will tell us about those laws, and she will also tell. I would request her to tell us about the OECD country guidelines as well as what is going on in the European Union, so that we know where we are standing right now vis-a-vis those laws. Advocate Yashasvi, you can start now your presentation.
Thank you, sir. So let's talk about the Australia's laws. Australia regulates data privacy and protection through a mix of federal, state, and territory laws. The Federal Privacy Act 1988 Privacy Act and its Australian privacy principles applies to private sector entities with an annual turnover of at least $3 million and the Commonwealth Government and Australian Capital Territory government agencies. Under the Privacy Act, the Privacy Commissioner has authority to conduct investigations, including own motion investigations, to enforce the Privacy Act and seek civil penalties for serious and egregious breaches or for repeated breaches of the APPs where an entity has failed to implement remedial efforts. Most states and territories in Australia, except Western Australia and South Australia, have their own data protection legislation applicable to state government agencies and private businesses that interact with state government agencies. These acts include: first one is Information Privacy Act 2014, that is Australian Capital Territory. Second, Information Act 2002, that is Northern Territory. Third, Privacy and Personal Information Protection Act 1998, that is New South Wales. Fourth, Information Privacy Act 2009, that is Queensland. Fifth, Personal Information Protection Act 2004, Tasmania. And sixth, Privacy and Data Protection Act 2014, Victoria. Additional parts of state and federal legislation relate to data protection. For example, the following all impact privacy and data protection for specific types of data or specific activities: the Telecommunication Act 1997, the Criminal Code Act 1995, the National Health Act 1953, the Health Records and Information Privacy Act 2002, the Health Records Act 2001, and the Workplace Surveillance Act 2005. Both the Australian Commonwealth and state government have expressed an intent to further consider data privacy and protection issues beyond existing legislation, including a focus on protecting minors online. Under the Privacy Act and the APPs, an organization can any of the following. First one is an individual, second a body corporate, third a partnership, fourth any other incorporated association, fifth a trust. So now move to Canada's laws. In Canada, there are 28 federal, provincial, and territorial privacy statutes, excluding statutory torts, privacy requirement under other legislation, federal anti-spam legislation, identity theft or criminal code, etc., that govern the protection of personal information in the private, public, and health sectors. Although each statute varies in scope, substantive requirements, remedies, and enforcement provisions, they all set out a comprehensive design for the collection, use, and disclosure of personal information. The summary below focuses on Canada's private sector privacy statutes. First one is Personal Information Protection and Electronic Documents Act, PIPEDA, Personal Information Protection Act, PIPA Alberta, Personal Information Protection Act, PIPA VC, Personal Information Protection Act, and Identity Theft Prevention Act, PIPITA, PIPITA PA, not yet enforced, an act respecting the protection of personal information in the private sector, Quebec Privacy Act, collectively Canadian Privacy Statutes. PIPEDA applies to all of the following. First one is consumer and employee personal information practices of organizations that are deemed to be a federal work undertaking of business. Example, banks, telecommunication companies, airlines, railways, and other interprovincial undertakings. Second one is organization who collect, use, and disclose personal information in the course of a commercial activity which take place within a province, unless the province has enacted substantially similar legislation. PIPA BC, PIPA Alberta, and the Quebec Privacy Act has been deemed substantially similar. Third one is interprovincial and international collection, use, and disclosure of personal information. PIPA BC, PIPA Alberta, and the Quebec Privacy Act apply to both consumer and employee personal information practices of organizations within BC, Alberta, and Quebec respectively that are not otherwise governed by PIPEDA.
Okay, ma'am. Just can we have? It looks like Australia and Canada have very good and well-developed laws regarding the data privacy. Tell us some more laws of the world. Like, ma'am, can you please start now?
Yes, sir.
हाँ,
So let's talk
आप
about
please
the
continue
France
करते जाइए.
laws. The General Data Protection Regulations, Regulation EU 2016-679 GDPR is a European Union law which entered into force in 2016 and following a 2-year transition period became directly applicable law in all member states of the European Union on May 25, 2018 without requiring implementation by the EU member states through national law. The application of the GDPR turns on whether an organization is established in the EU, and establishment may take a wide variety of forms and is not necessarily a legal entity registered in an EU member state. However, the GDPR also has extraterritorial effect. An organization that it is not established within the EU will still be subject to the GDPR if it processes personal data of data subjects who are in the union where the processing activities are related to the offering of goods or services. Article 3, subclause 2, subclause A, no payment is required to such data subject in the EU or the monitoring of the behavior. Article 3, subclause 2, subclause B, as far as the behavior law provides that it applies when the data controller or data processor is established in France, whether or not the processing takes place in France, or the targeted data subjects reside in France. USA now talks about the USA's law. The US has several sector specific and medium specific national privacy or data security laws, including laws and regulations that apply to financial institutions, telecommunication companies, personal health information, credit report information, children's information, telemarketing, and direct marketing. The US also has hundreds of privacy and data security among its 50 states and territories, such as requirements for safeguarding data, disposal of data, privacy policies, appropriate use of social security numbers, and data breach notification. California alone has more than 25 privacy and data security laws, including the recently enacted California Consumer Privacy Act of 2018 CCPA effective January 1, 2020. The CCPA applies cross-sector and includes sweeping definitions and broad individual rights and imposes substantial requirements and restrictions on the collection, use, and disclosure of personal information. In addition, the US Federal Trade Commission (FTC) has jurisdiction over a wide range of commercial entities under its authority to prevent and protect consumers against unfair or deceptive trade practices, including materially unfair privacy and data security practices. The FTC uses this authority to, among other things, issue regulations, enforce certain privacy laws, and take enforcement actions and investigate companies for, like failing to implement reasonable data security measures, making materially inaccurate privacy and security representation, including in privacy policies, failing to abide by applicable industry self-regulatory principles, transferring or attempting to transfer personal information to an acquiring entity in a bankruptcy or M&A transaction in a manner not expressly disclosed on the applicable consumer privacy policy, violating consumer privacy rights by collecting, using, sharing, or failing to adequately protect consumer information in violation of the FTC's consumer privacy framework or certain national privacy laws and regulations. Now, move to introduction to OECD. What is OECD? In recent years, several initiatives have been undertaken to address new and elevated privacy risks, particularly in the context of trans-border data flows. The work is ongoing, and examples include the European Union system of binding corporate rules, the global discussion on the commonly accepted elements of privacy, accountability, and the Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation's cross-border privacy rules system. At the OECD, the cross-border cooperation among privacy enforcement authorities has been a priority, resulting in the adoption of 2007 recommendation on cross-border cooperation in the enforcement of laws protecting privacy. The Seoul Declaration for the Future of the Internet Economy 2008 recommended that the OECD access has the application of certain OECD instruments, including the 1980 guidelines, in light of changing technologies, market and user behavior, and the growing importance of digital identities. This declaration triggered the launch of a formal review of the 1980 guidelines. Trans-border flows of personal data. In the 1980s, data flows largely constituted discrete point-to-point transmission between businesses or government. Today, data can process simultaneously in multiple locations, dispersed for storage around the globe, recombined instantaneously, and moved across borders by individuals carrying mobile devices. Services such as cloud computing allow organizations and individuals to access data that may be stored anywhere in the world. A data controller remains accountable for personal data under its control without regard to the location of the data. It defines measures which a data controller can put in place to ensure a continuing level of protection, which may result from a combination of measures such as technical and organizational security safeguards, contacts, complaint handling processes, audits, etc. The guidelines acknowledges the member countries have the ability to supplement the standards set forth by the guidelines with additional measures necessary for the protection of privacy and individual liberties, which may impact trans-border flows of personal data. Such measures should be implemented in a manner that at least impacts the free flow of personal data. International cooperation and interoperability. The OECD recommendation on internet policymaking calls for a strengthening of consistency and effectiveness in privacy protection at a global level. The communique, which is annexed to it for information purposes, further recognizes the objective of government to pursue global interoperability in this area. The terms of reference similarly identify the value of globally interoperable privacy framework that ensure effective protection of privacy and support the free flow of personal information around the world. However, we still face considerable challenges in promoting interoperability and convergence among our public policies on issues such as protection of personal data.
Ma'am, could you please tell us about EDPS a little bit? What is EDPS, and we would like to learn from you. What is EDPS and where it is applied?
European Data Protection Supervisor. Guiding principles, good governance, integrity, and good administrative behavior. Number one, the EDPS shall act in the public's interest as an expert as well as an independent, reliable, proactive, and authoritative body in the field of privacy and personal data protection. Number two, the EDPS shall act in accordance with the EDPS ethics framework, accountability, and transparency. Number three, the EDPS shall engage openly and transparently with the media and stakeholders and explain its activities to the public in a clear language. Role of the European Data Protection Supervisor. The European Data Protection Supervisor shall decide the strategic priorities of the EDPS and adopt the policy documents corresponding to the tasks and powers of the EDPS. Handling of complaints. The EDPS shall handle complaints submitted in writing, including in electronic form, in any official language of the Union and which provide details necessary for the complaint to be understood. The EDPS shall only disclose the identity of the complainant to the extent necessary for the proper conduct of the investigation. The EDPS shall cooperate with the competent oversight authorities, including competent national supervisory authorities, acting within the scope of the respective review of complaints and judicial remedies. Whereas the EDPS issues a decision on a complaint, the complainant or institution concerned may request that the EDPS review its decision. Such a request shall be made within 1 month of the decision. Upon issuing its decision on a complaint, the EDPS shall inform the complainant and the institution concerned that they have the right both to request a review of its decision and to challenge the decision before the Court of Justice of the European Union in accordance with Article 263 of the Treaty on the Functioning of the European Union. Moving forward, we would be discussing few case laws relating to the data breach. The first is related to Shreya Singhal versus Union of India. It is a judgment by a two-judge bench of the Supreme Court of India in 2015 on the issue of online speech and the intermediary liability in India. The Supreme Court struck down Section 66A of the Information and Technology Act 2000 relating to restrictions on online speech as unconstitutional on the grounds of violating the freedom of speech guaranteed under Article 19, Clause 1, Subclause A of the Constitution of India. The court further held that the section was not saved by virtue of being reasonable restrictions as the freedom of speech under Article 19, Clause 2. The Supreme Court also laid down Section 79 and rules under this section. It held that online intermediaries would only be obligated to take down consent on receiving an order from a court or government authority. This case is considered as a watershed movement for online free speech in India. So the next case that we would be dealing with is Google Spain versus AEPD and Mario Costeja Gonzalez 13 May 2014, commonly known as Google versus Spain. In 1998, the Spanish newspaper La Vanguardia published two announcements in its printed edition regarding the forced sale of properties arising from social security debts. The announcements were published on the order of the Spanish Ministry of Labor and Social Affairs, and their purpose was to attract as many bidders as possible. Costeja then contacted Google Spain in February 2010, asking the links to the announcements be removed. Google Spain forwarded the request to Google Inc., whose registered office is in California, United States, taking the view that this was the responsible body. Costeja subsequently logged the complaint with the Spanish Data Protection Agency, asking both the newspaper to be required to be remove the data and that Google Spain or Google Inc. be required to remove the links to the data. On 30 July 2010, the director of AEPD rejected the complaint against the newspaper but upheld the complaint against Google Spain and Google Inc., calling on them to remove the links complained of and make access to data impossible. So judgment was that the Court of Justice of the European Union ruled that an internet search engine operator is responsible for the processing that it carries out of personal data which appear on web pages published by third parties, upholding a right of issuance. The court considered the material scope of the directive first. Regarding the territorial scope of the directive, the court observed that Google Spain is a subsidiary of Google Inc. on a Spanish territory and therefore establishment within the meaning of the directive. The court rejected Google Inc.'s argument that it was not carrying out its data processing in Spain, holding that the promotion and selling of advertising space by its subsidiary Google Spain was sufficient to constitute processing within the meaning of its directive. So, in order to know about the data breach, we conducted 4 surveys. So, the first survey that was conducted by us was about the French data security. So, in the modern era, everyone talks about their data security, even they want to secure it. On this note, I conducted a survey over it to know seriously people are aware about the safety of their data or not. So let's check. Survey was conducted around 1000 or 1100 people, and in that I asked simple questions. We all know that today's time every single person have a smartphone, including ones that are kids too. In this tune, my first question was how many people use social media application. I found that 96% of the population use social media while there exists only 4% that doesn't use social media. When I moved to my second question was either they use social media as a personal basis like uploading their pictures, updating daily life, etc. or not. I came to know that 64% of the people like uploading their personal life over the internet, while 36% don't. Then we forwarded to third question, and it's very important one that are you aware that uploading your personal data on the web increases the chances of your data getting stolen? The response shows that 80% know about it and left 20% have no idea about this. It means out of 80%, we can say that 50% still updating their daily life on social media. And when they know the data is not secure, another side we can see how people mindset means 20% people have no idea about the security of their data. Still, they are doing the same thing. Hence, we can conclude that people don't care about their personal data. I think 10 or 20% people would be serious about the security of their personal details, left only one having chill to get more followers, likes, comments, and blah blah. But when their data get leaked at that moment, they think what they did otherwise, they're simply busy in their social life. So concluding, I would like to say that खुद की जिंदगी के बारे में खुद जानो, दुनिया को बताकर क्या करोगे? अगर कुछ बड़ा कर गए अपनी जिंदगी में, आधे से ज्यादा लोगों को मार डालोगे, और नहीं तो इसी तरह दुनिया को सोशल मीडिया पर क्या करे, क्या ना करे, क्या जरे, क्या ही बताते रह जाओगे. So the next survey conducted by us was the customer data security survey. Nowadays, mostly people like to visit mall and do shopping. While doing survey, my first question was to them to know either people use card or cash for doing payment. 50 to 53% of the people use card, while 47 use cash. Second was, while doing payment, do they ask to share personal details, that is name, contact number or address? I found 68% of say yes, whereas 32% replied with a no. Now more to third question, that was, do they share details to them? I got to know that 71% of the population rarely share their details, while there still exists 30% who share their details. Last but not the least question to the people was, have you ever asked them about why are they asking your details? 59% say yes, while there still exists 41% who never ask them why they are seeking their personal data. Hence, public is so frequent in sharing their card details that it's not much difference between them. I would just simply want to say that Jago Grahak Jago. So, the third survey conducted by me was the credit and the debit card data privacy survey. In order to know about the security of credit and debit card data, I conducted a survey of 1,000 people. We asked them various questions related to the data privacy and came to know their different viewpoints. The first question in the survey was whether they owe a card or not, and if yes, then which card do they owe? We came to know that 84% of the people are convenient with using debit card, while only 16% are convenient using credit card. This shows how people are more convenient with the features of debit card as compared to credit card. When asked about its frequent use, 66.70% frequently use their card, while 33.30% doesn't regularly use these cards. This clearly portrays that how these cards have become a part of our daily life. Nowadays, people look for convenience, and these cards are very convenient to use. And the best part is that you can carry the card everywhere you go instead of carrying cash. Nowadays, people have become somewhat sincere and handle these cards with utmost sincerity. 69.59% of the people have never lost their cards, while there still exist 30.50% of the people who lost their cards in shopping malls, roads, or any other public place. Although credit and debit cards have become part of our daily life, still people hesitate to share their card details over the web. The most important reason for this is the fear of data being leaked. When asked whether they share their card details over the web, only 37.10% of them share their card details over the web, while 62.90% have don't share the information over the web. This clearly shows that people don't have full faith over the internet when it comes to sharing of personal details. When asked that whether their data have been leaked. 77.10% people have never got their personal data leaked where they exist. 22.90% people whose personal data has been leaked. Out of 22.90% whose data has been leaked, 81% have never ever filed a complaint for the data being leaked. It clearly portrays how unaware people are of the laws that protect their personal data. People too don't file a case due to some monetary problem or due to delay in our justice system. The next question clearly portrays the picture of our judiciary system. Out of 19% who filed a case in the court for the personal data loss, 74% of the complaint has never ever been entertained, while there still exists only 26% whose complaint been entertained. This clearly states the reason why people don't approach the court to seek justice in the delay in our justice system. So the last survey which was conducted by us was the banking data privacy survey. At the present time, mostly everyone has their own bank account. We conducted a survey to find out how concerned people are about the privacy of their banking data. We asked them various questions related to banking data privacy, and the results are 88.70% of the people have the account in their own name. This shows that opening a bank account has become the need of the era. This has been clearly portrayed by graph A. Despite of knowing that how essential it is to link their phone number to the account, there still exists 14.50% of the people who have unregistered mobile number linked to their bank account. However, the percentage is very small, but this shows how neglected people are when it comes to securing data as portrayed by graph P. Nowadays, many online banking facilities has been provided by the banks for providing convenience to their customers. Yet, the customers hesitate to share their details over the web. When asked, do they regularly use online banking facilities? 61.30 said yes, they do, while 38.70 replied with a no. The next question of the survey made this picture clear. When asked, do they hesitate to share their details over the web? 84% stated yes, they do. When asked why, the most common answer was they don't find it secure. Although online banking is more convenient, but privacy is utmost important. Many laws have been introduced in order to protect data, but there exists only 68% who are aware, while 32% people still are unaware of these laws. We asked them that whether they witnessed any fraud that has caused their personal data being leaked. 90.30 reverted with a no, while 9.70 have witnessed. Those who have witnessed fraud, out of them, 87% filed a case for the loss suffered due to the data being leaked. But filing a complaint is not just a thing that matters. The thing that matters the most is whether the loss been recovered or not. The next question clears this picture. 75% people who filed a complaint, the complaint was never ever been entertained. I asked them why did they don't approach the court? Mostly they replied, what's the use? Approaching the court not only causes a monetary loss, but it's also the waste of time because there is always a delay in our justice system. This portrays that it's high time to make the people aware of our justice system, to make them more conscious and sincere, and make them realize the importance of data privacy. So that was all from my part. Now I would like Advocate Ram sir to continue.
Well, let us learn from something about the beaches. This is the last part of our webinar, and we we have come to know from our eminent guests the about the survey. The survey has clearly shown us that it is high time that people are aware of their private data, and people are still not trusting the administration as far as the protection of data is concerned and the protection of laws. There are still no valid laws in India to take care of these things. and if they are very long processes. Well, let us learn about the results of a breach and what happens when a breach is there. I would request our advocate Yashasvi to throw some light on the breach.
Thank you, sir. So, data breach. IT Act and rules does not define data breach. However, Rule 2H of the Information Technology, the Indian Computer Emergency Response Team and manner of performing functions and duties, rules 2009 defines as unauthorized acquisition by a person of data or information that compromises the confidentiality, integrity, or availability of information maintained in a computer resource. Section 3, Clause 29 of PDP Bill defines personal data breach as any unauthorized or accidental disclosure, acquisition, sharing, use, alteration, destruction, loss of access to of personal data that com- compromise the confidentiality, integrity, or availability of personal data to a data principal. In general terms, it is an information security incident in which personal information is publicly exposed or accessed without, without authorization. What can be done in case of data breach? Let's know. The Constitution does not specifically deal with the data privacy. However, the courts have read the right to privacy into other existing fundamental rights, that is freedom of speech and expression under Article 19, Clause 1, Subclause A, and right to life and personal liberty under Article 21 of the Constitution of India. Recently, in the landmark case of Justice K.S. Puttaswamy and another versus a Union of India and others. The Constitution Bench of Honorable Supreme Court has held right to privacy as a fundamental right, subject to certain reasonable restrictions. India presently does not have any express legislation governing data protection. The relevant laws in India dealing with data protection are the Information Technology Act 2000 and the Indian Contract Act 1872. First one is Section 43A of the IT Act 2000, compensation for failure to protect data. Second, Section 72A of the Act, punishment for disclosure of information in breach of lawful contract. Third one is Section 69 of the Act, which is an exception to the general rule of maintenance of privacy and secrecy of the information, provides that where the government is satisfied that it is necessary in the interest of the sovereignty of integrity of India, defense of India, security of the state, friendly religion with foreign state, etc. Section 72 of the IT Act says penalty for breach of confidentiality and privacy. Next one is the government has notified the information technology rules, reasonable security practices and procedures sensitive personal data or information rules 2011. Next one is the Indian criminal law does not specifically address breaches of data privacy. Under the IPC, liability for such breaches must be inferred from related crime. For instance, Section 403 of the IPC imposes criminal penalty for dishonest misappropriation of conversion of movable property for one's own use. Next one is the Indian Copyright Act describes mandatory punishment for a piracy of copyrighted matter commensurate with the gravity of the offense. Section 63B of Indian Copyright Act provides that any person who knowingly make use on a computer of an infringing copy of computer program shall be punishable for a minimum period of 6 months and a maximum of 3 years in prison. Now, let's have a look on reports of data breach in India and the world. So we can see first one is India. We can take so in 2015 in India we have 32.1 million data breach cases were there, and 2016 36.6 billion, and so on. And we can, if we say in a whole world, we can see in 2015 707.5 million cases were there, and so on. So now talks about the facts on data breaches in the world since 2013. According to the breach label index, over 9.7 billion data records have been lost or stolen globally since 2013 as a result of data breaches. The following images shows the total number of data breaches worldwide since 2013, while giving a country-by-country information on the same. Almost 64% of the data stolen data records occur in the US, whose large population, concentration of major companies, and rate of technological adoption make it the most massive hotspot. Even though India does not fall under the top countries with data breaches, it is still a concern that India has data breaches between 100 million to 1 billion since 2013.
Thank you.
So we can
I would thank my our panelists